Welcome to the David Spisak Show. I am so thankful that you're here with us, and I have complete confidence that you're going to thoroughly enjoy the conversation that we all are going to have in the next 30 to 45 minutes, because the guest that I have on now, I've had the pleasure of knowing for a number of years, and beyond the fact that he's a wickedly smart, talented, and innovative human being, and you'll see that by virtue of his company. But he also is a tremendously, genuinely great guy. He's just a nice guy. So I thoroughly enjoy every time I have the opportunity to hang out with him at industry events, and I hope that you'll join me in welcoming Mr. Tim Cox. Tim is the co-founder and Chief Evangelist of CarNow. Tim, thanks for joining.
Thank you, David. I need to have you follow me around and just every time I speak to the team, give me that same kind of intro. That would be incredible. But you're too kind. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. If you give me enough notice, I'll do that next time you come home from a long trip. I'll introduce you to your family, your wife and family.
I'd appreciate
and now,
that. Thank you. Thank you.
With no further ado, here's your husband and father. Yeah. Well, it's good to be with you. And it is truly always, whenever I'm at an industry event and I happen to see you're either on the list of attendees, or more often I walk in and at some point I happen to see you out of the corner of my eye, it's always just a pleasure to hang out and chat with you, because you really are genuinely a really good guy and very good at what you do. So my hope is that over the course of the next 30 to 45 minutes that we could share some things a little bit about your background and about how CarNow, I love that show, how it was built, right? And I'm fascinated by entrepreneurs and by leadership, as you are. And so there's a number of things I want to touch on. And frankly, not so much about, hey, the product does this, the solution does that. We know it's a spectacular product, and it's been wildly successful for the clients that you have that are using it. But I'd love to go a little bit deeper, if that's okay, and get into some non-traditional, maybe uncommon conversations that would help people to understand what was the defining moment in brought CarNow to the market. What are some of the lessons that you've learned? And what are you excited about going forward, both for your company, but also for the industry? So how's that sound?
Sure. Let's go.
Okay, so let's start with this. Let's go back in time. I believe that it's December of this year. You're going to be celebrating, amazingly, your 10th anniversary of being in business at CarNow. Fair?
Fair. That's exactly correct. December 1st.
Okay, so let's do a little Benjamin Buttons, little M. Night Shyamalan, rewind the tape, if you will, and go back to before that happened. Oftentimes I share with people that you are where you are. All of us are where we are right now, not based on what we're doing today, but something we did previous today that made that happen. So how did CarNow come about? What was kind of the defining moment or the turning point where you said, man, I'm going to go out and do something on my own and solve this problem?
That's a great question. And I think it's a pretty cool story. So my original...
I'll be the judge of that, Tim.
Do what now?
I'll be the judge of whether it's cool or not.
Okay. Let me know halfway through, then I'll just stop so I don't bore everybody. But I have been in the car business my whole life. I started selling cars when I was 17 years old, pretty successful, and moved to Atlanta to follow my girlfriend, now wife of 27, soon to be 28 years.
Wow.
And moved to Atlanta in 1995 and got a job at Evans Toyota. And then was there for roughly 8 years, made my way up the ladder there, and then moved to Hennessy Lexus, and sat in all the chairs. There was a couple little brief stops in between those stores, but again, spent 8 years at Toyota, 10 years, 4 months, 3 days at the great, incredible dealer group Hennessy here in Atlanta. And my original partner just walked in to my office in the spring or early summer of 2013, and I was really busy. It was a Saturday, and he said, "Hey, can I just pick your brain?" Or came to the receptionist, and he said, "Can I see Tim Cox?" And she said, "Do you have an appointment?" He said, "No. Tell him I'm not here to sell anything, but I just want to pick his brain." And so we met, we had a conversation, and, through that conversation, I didn't have a lead problem. A lot of dealers even back then and today, don't necessarily have a lead problem. They have a process problem or a differentiator problem. And at the time there was a group here in Atlanta that came in, and I sold more certified pre-owned Lexus than anyone within 3 or 4 states. But at the same time, car gurus back in the day would say, hey, this is a great deal, or this is not, like they still do. Now they have a certified section. But this guy could, put a Lexus ES, same year, same model, but it's been hit more times than Joe Louis, and it was $5,000 cheaper than my certified car, right? So I started doing videos, very short videos on every VDP on, hey, this is Tim Cox, this is why we're different. And so we took that into how do we communicate, and we figured out that the quickest and easiest way was to put that into a chat, right? To be able to send that. So we were the first company in any vertical, to my knowledge. Too bad you can't patent software to put rich content into a SMS chat, whether that's video or a brochure. Why is a Lexus better than an Acura, or Acura better than a Lexus? Whatever. And we were the first to do that. And I put that in my store, and I saw how, in fact, I still have on my phone the first car we sold through CarNow at my Lexus dealership. And we started getting some traction on getting my people to use it. And then they went from that to fighting over the leads. And then I knew I had something. So December 1st of 2014, I walked away from the dealership with not one paying customer, with the blessings of Peter Hennessy, great human being. He gave me some encouragement. He said, Tim, you always have he said, I know you, and I know, I believe this is going to work because I believe in you, but you always have a home here. So that made me feel good. Had a daughter getting ready to go into college, and I just went knocking on doors. And we've been, we've had ups and downs like every company, but we've been very, very fortunate thus far. So we'll keep on. But that's how it started.
I love the story. And by the way, it's so cool to hear that just from a whole different perspective, because you would never know this, but I had several visits in that very Lexus store, visiting with Mr. Hennessy. I stopped in with Paul Folletti from NCM, and
yep.
they're big NCM members, and so we stopped in there on a number of occasions, met with him, discussed Accessa, my reporting platform, and I remember that store distinctly. And it's incredible to think that you were there at that time. I had no idea who you were, or vice versa. Yep. And yet, this is how cool life is, that you just don't know the twists and turns, how the road's going to go. But here I am sitting in front of you talking about what has already become a tremendously successful company. So thank you for sharing that with me. Tim, has any time over the last 10 years, what's been some of the best lessons or greatest lessons that you've learned through being a co-founder and running CarNow? And did you have any major challenges, huge obstacles along the way that turned out to be a bit of a tipping point?
Yeah, I learned early on, sometimes, and sometimes you run so fast you drop the ball. Let's just be completely honest. My wife, I gave a talk many years ago, heard a talk, made it my own, but the talk was what it's like to be on the other side of you. And I think that, in the world of social media now, and there's a lot of influencers, and people portray to be one thing, but yet behind the scenes, you talk to the people at their dealership, you talk to people that work for them or around them, they're completely different. So I wanted to daily really understand that the success that we were trying to, because when we started CarNow, back to the beginning, it was God, I love my wife. Again, been with her almost 30 years now, married, been with her more than that. But, Hennessy, just so you know where it is, was 52 miles one way from my house here in Peachtree City, which is 25 minutes south of the Atlanta airport. So I would drive, I would be at the store all day. I'd come home, 9 o'clock. I'd take a shower just to wake up. My sweet, beautiful wife would have my dinner in the microwave, and then I'd get on the phone and Zoom meetings till 1, 2, sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning. And we had a joke that I was talking to Jake for State Farm and he was hideous, right? She's like, who are you talking to? So my partners were Jake from State Farm. So we obviously were obsessed with success, but I found out that when you chase significance in people's lives more than the success comes. Hire the right people and get out of their way. And there's some things that, completely transparent, as I hope we all are, that also created, when you create, I would say, La Familia, and I still believe that, the family, we're going to love on you. I'm going to help you, because people have life other than CarNow, right? They have babies get sick. They have parents that pass. They have, when you're a part of that and you're pouring into them, that really makes a big difference. And like Maxwell says, it's the law of attraction. So we grew very quickly because that energy was there, the law of attraction and the law of duplication. Let me duplicate that process and allow hiring the right people, the other people to continue to duplicate that. And, every OEM partner later and 5,000 plus dealerships, we've been very, very fortunate.
Tim, a lot to extract from everything. I mean, one of the things I'm challenged with already here in this conversation is that, you're dropping, multiple things that are noteworthy, I believe. And in any one of them, I feel really confident that you and I could go off and have a 1-hour conversation about one of them. So, but I'm going to touch on a couple things. First of all, I mean, God bless your wonderful wife. I mean, where would any of us be without our
Amen.
partners, right? Without our families, our partners. And, Simon Sinek obviously talks about, your why. And that's become such a commonplace term. It's one of those things in life that I think gets bantied about so much that it almost devalues it at times. But the reality is, to your point, if you are somebody who really does value significance, values humanity, values human interactions, values servant leadership or helping people more than obviously the P&L, those things really do mean a lot. I mean, it's part of your core DNA. I know it is. And so having our families and our wives, I'm heading out again today, and this is, I don't know how many 4-day, 5-day trips I've been on the last couple of months, but way too many for my liking. As I always say, Tim, I don't just love my wife, I like the heck out of my wife. I mean, I like my wife so much, and that there's nothing worse than not being around her or being around my family. So I love that. But, it is that those sacrifices that we make in order to obviously not just move our companies forward, as you know, but also hopefully move forward the lives of, those 230 people that work at CarNow, move forward and positively impact the lives of those people that work in 5,000 stores, help them to do better, convert more, and make more money. So I love everything about that. Has there been, Tim, actually, I'm going to start with this. You mentioned the word process, and I'm always fascinated by the fact that there are things that are seemingly obvious and yet they don't get pursued in my mind as much as they should. So process is one of them. Process clearly to many people is not sexy. Process clearly is to a lot of people something where you're saying, I have to do it this way. And they put their hands up because they don't like the sound of that. But it turns out that process, as you know, allows me to focus on I know what I do. You're telling me exactly what I need to do. You're allowing me to understand fully what your expectation is. And it allows me to allow my personality and the best things about me to come out, because I don't have to worry about trying to remember what I have to do or focusing on that. Secondly, the most valuable companies in the world are all process-driven and data-centric. Why is it that people seem to be so averse in your mind to process?
We're actually, because we want to do it our way. Because we've always, the one thing that I hear over and over and over, obviously, the Hennessy's, Peter Hennessy, what an incredible organization that is. But when I had the chance to obviously leave and go to some of the best dealerships in the country, and unfortunately some of the not the best dealerships in the country. I hear over and over and over and over and over again, well, we've always done it this way, right? And I mean,
whether or not it works.
Yeah, whether or not it works or not, we've always done it this way. And quite frankly, full transparency, as I eat my own dog food here, if I'm going to say it, like we're going through refining our process now, even at CarNow. I'm reminded of, I was talking to Joe Gilmore, our co-CEO here at CarNow, and he reminded me of a brilliant story. I sometimes have the, Vince Lombardi at the beginning of every training camp would say, gentlemen, this is a football. Getting back to the basics. And Joe reminded me that Vince Lombardi when he won had 8 plays. That's it.
That's
but
right.
He ran them with perfection. And so I'm even, in fact, I told you before I jumped in this call, getting off of our regional meetings with our sales directors, and we're truly, really trying to, because again, this is no sales pitch, but we got a really good product and it works really well. So why isn't everybody using it? So let's refine and first define and then refine the process. But it's to answer your question, because it's painful. Because it's not easy. Your process to be a great athlete probably means you have to get up at 4:30 in the morning and go run the stairs for an hour before practice. The process, if you want to be a great athlete, like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, is getting up 2 and 3 hours before anybody showed up and shooting 1,000 free throws and shooting. That's not the fun part. That's not the glamorous part. People see you. And you speak all over the country, and I love you to death. I listen to every word you say, and people see, maybe they don't see the behind the scenes running the stairs at 4 a.m. No. They don't see that, and that's the difference between good and great, in my humble opinion, is because it's painful. And I'm preaching to myself too. He whips out the book. I promise, ladies and gentlemen, we did not plan that.
We did not practice.
We did not practice that. I said good to great, and then Spisak whips out the book. Unbelievable. You can't time. We're like peas and carrots. But anyway, it's painful for me because, I can look back and say, well, we've got every single OEM partner. We've got 5,000. Why? No. If you're not getting, I told the team today, you're either moving forward or you're moving backwards, but guarantee you're moving somewhere. Life is your direction determines your destination. I can't put my sunscreen, no matter how much I pray about it, how much I think I'm going to go, I can't put sunscreen and sunglasses and head north on 75 and hit Florida. It's never going to happen.
That's right.
My direction determines my destination. So again, it's just a mindset. Process is painful, and people have always done it one way, and they don't want to change, quite frankly.
It's so interesting as you say that. I couldn't help but thinking I love the fact that if we keep our eyes open and our brains open, we could learn lessons literally anywhere in life. You can go to the worst seminar and I've learned something. You could go to a bad movie and learn something. You could watch a commercial and learn something. I was sitting in a car one time. I'll never forget the first time this ever happened because it was just a weird sensation. I know you'll know what I'm saying when I say it. You're sitting in a car. You're in a standstill, and all of a sudden, the car next to you, for whatever reason, puts their car in reverse, and their car, the periphery of your eye, starts to go backwards. How do you feel?
You feel like
you're going forward. Yeah. Isn't that crazy? You didn't move. Yeah. So you could sit there to your point that you're always doing, something's always happening, right? So if that person starts pulling forward, you feel like you're going backwards. And one of the great lessons that a wise person taught me 100 years ago is to disrupt yourself, is to constantly disrupt yourself before your competition disrupts you. Yep. Don't get complacent. Don't buy your own, don't fall in love with your own ideas. Fall in love with results. And so I love that you said that. And it's in your very core to do that. Most companies, got every OEM. I mean, that's one of the hardest things to do. For any company I work with, it's like, man, we only got half the OEMs. You can't get approved here. You've got every OEM, and that is a massive validation that you've got a product that matters. And I think, when you say, hey, our solution works, to me, I love saying that it's just a product that matters in the industry. It matters for the people that use it. So, and hey, we've got 5,000 clients. For most people, they'd say that's almost unimaginable. And yet you're here saying, what's next? I think two of the most powerful words on this planet is what's great. That's great. What's next? So tell me this, as you go forward now from here, and you're in this, I don't know if you're in a constant state of reinvention, Tim, if that's your mindset, but I suppose that you probably somewhere there's some innovation lab in your brain that's percolating 24/7. As you move forward, one of the things that I was very interested in is AI. And the reason why is I'm intrigued by it. I think it's compelling in many ways, and I also think it's snake oil in other ways. And I don't mean that there's anything entirely negative or that it's evil in some way, something like that. I'm not going to that point, but I will say this. I think at NADA this past year, my nickname for NADA was AI ad nauseum, because it just seemed like everybody was throwing about the term AI, AI, AI. And I know AI cannot and it will not replace a human, because it cannot generate or nurture a relationship. It cannot sense things at the nuanced level. But AI does have a place in our industry. And what the reason I'm bringing this up is you guys have AI, but it's different. And you guys seem like you're very intentional about having thoughtful AI. I want to know what thoughtful AI means to you and why that matters to the end user.
Well, at the end of the day, the automotive State of the Union, to steal something from my buddy Paul Daly and Kyle, we're coming on. Everybody, I think, ad nauseum is sick of talking about the pandemic and how much money we made, but then people are looking at their financial sheets, their spreadsheets, their P&Ls, and they're trying to get back to where they were, and maybe we're trying to expense our way to it, right? And there's buzzwords out there like AI and CDP. There's nothing wrong with these words, right? I think they're great being used, but we were I don't want to say slow. We were very thoughtful with AI. I would argue we're definitely one of, if not the leader, as far as communication. I've said since the beginning of CarNow, you can't sell a car without a conversation. So we look at it, a very simple explanation is, right now, if everybody in the United States said you can't drive an ICE engine anymore, you have to drive an EV, there'd be a problem. Not enough, we got range anxiety, we have not enough charging stations. What do you do about people in the inner city? Parking, couldn't happen. But everybody tomorrow could start driving a hybrid. And that's the way we look and thought through and again, and this could happen to anybody, because I've got friends, and look, I'm one of those weird people. I'm going to love on everybody. I just am. If there might, I'm sure people horse cuss me, but life's too short. And I have competitors out there that I've got relationships with. And I think there's a place, and there's plenty of dealers, but we just took, because we've heard the stories about selling a car for $1 and a Ford store or whatever it was, Chevy store, saying that a Ford was better and vice versa. So AI itself, so the company OpenAI, Amazon has an AI tool. These things are learning themselves. So what we wanted to do is have a hybrid model to where, the AI would obviously answer the simple questions and then drop it off into a human being. Because a lot of dealers, the majority of the dealers, we like to talk, you and I both know Patrick very well, but most dealership Patrick Abad, most dealerships aren't selling 650 cars a month, right? Car Dealer USA selling 110, 120. They don't have a 30-person BDC or whatever it is. So therefore, they need help. So let's assist, and then drop. And maybe let's just assist them as far as scheduling a service appointment. So a light AI there, using a QR code. That's been very successful. So just the simple fact of putting a QR code on the oil change sticker, right? Hey, listen, thank you so much for buying your new Lexus at ABC Lexus. We went, look, you saw how crazy it was as a service drive. And you call a dealer all the time and it's service, please hold, or parts, please hold. Just look, I understand you're busy. Just go ahead and scan the QR code right there. And let's just go ahead and schedule your service. You're in and out, and no big deal. Those types of things That's what I talk about, thoughtful. And then they dump that off into a human being to make sure that there is accountability there. That is what we mean by thoughtful AI. We have a product coming out that just came out this month called Reconnect that will read the CRM. And then, and again, Kevin Deutsch, don't know if you know him, he's closing our leads because of his process at 32%. That's pretty freaking high.
32%.
32%. In fact, I gave that. Let me see if I might call myself out. I gave that on a demo one day. Oh, here it is. So I was asked by the Butlers to come speak to their GMs, and I did. So they had all of our leads. I'm not going to show you the rest of the companies on here, but we were their highest closing, which is all I care about. You go back to what matters. It's about when I was managing stores, organic leads, all that stuff goes into the puzzle. But how many cars did I sell? That's how I provided, groceries for my family. But actually, on this one, he's at 32% now. I just fibbed to you in front of the whole world. 30.11%. So a little over 30%. But at the same time, there's dealers on here that were closing at 3%. So what was the difference? The difference was the process, right? But even somebody like Kevin says,
there's that word again.
Yep. I absolutely, I still have deals that slip through the crack. Please put me on. So having that, read the CRM, putting a campaign together, getting in front of 100% of the people, salespeople get busy, that's going to make a big difference. So that's what we're pretty excited about.
So, you're talking about there is one word that I focus on a lot with my dealer clients, and that's conversion, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, web traffic, as important as it is immaterial unless it converts, right? Leads, immaterial unless they convert. So in your estimation, when you look at somebody like that Butler organization, like his store, what is the difference maker? I mean, clearly they have a process that's a winning process.
Oh my gosh, we don't have enough time, but I'll try to summarize it. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can, if there was one lesson from there to make it digestible for people listening, that store does brilliantly, that a lot of stores haven't mastered, what is it?
Well, very, very quickly, Kevin has become one of my dearest friends. He's a great operator and, more importantly, a great human being. I want to surround myself with great human beings, and he is one. He got to the store was broken. The first thing he did, he met with all the managers, said, give me all your business cards. Everybody threw their business cards. Their titles are all gone away. Your manager, here's your phone number. Then he sent out a massive email to the tens of thousands of clients with his personal cell phone on it. And he got some drunk dials at 3:00 in the morning, but anyway, he started cleaning it up. Then he, we can talk about service a whole other day. But one of the main things is whether it's his parts manager, who ironically enough I worked with 27 years ago at the Toyota store, Greg, whether it's his parts manager or his service manager or his ops director or his sales manager, they have meetings to where they know what everybody else's numbers do. And they know where they need to be. So service knows where sales need to be. Sales knows where it needs to be service. And here's the key. You talk about how you're closing at 30%, and I just showed you, that was their report, not mine. That wasn't a self-generated, hey, look at us report. That was their report, 30+% on our particular leads. Now, he has they live, his finance managers, his internet manager, they all live behind the sales tower. His variable ops, I think it's his variable ops manager, which is his service/parts director, behind the sales desk. Everybody's involved. And then if there's a TO, F&I managers are higher. I don't even know if I can say where they're at because it does change, but higher than any, per copy. It's incredible what they're doing. But that's the key. They're all involved and they work as one unit. We talk about spokes. A lot of people talk about it. A lot of social media, a lot of podcasts. Everybody talks about it. He lives it. Patrick lives it. I can go down the list. They live it. And success leaves clues. So rather than making a post or that, but I would argue, having your finance manager, your service manager and that type of thing all behind the desk at different times of the day to where you can see, and having your internet manager right behind the desk, where his office is behind the desk. Again, I don't know if there's enough, your configuration on your real estate, but that was a key success for turning that store around and closing the way they're closing.
Obviously, you just brought up something that's just a reality. For a lot of stores, that isn't, plausible, right? It's not viable because just based on the way that their footprint is or real estate, but the way that's set up, but it certainly is massive food for thought if somebody's building an organization, a brand new facility, that it's time to rethink the way you set that up. The old school way of doing things where you have the tower and, it's like I'm going to see the pharmacist and I'm looking up, hey, can you help work me this deal? And you're looking down on me and it's off the floor, or the GM, I'll go to stores and the general manager is nowhere to be found. It's not that they're not solid people or they don't know what they're doing, but their office is upstairs, for God's sakes, when it's not even, you can't have your finger on the pulse. Famously, Michael Bloomberg, had that massive office in New York City, and he didn't have an office. He was in the middle of the floor. His desk was right in the center. So there's a lot to be said for that. The big takeaway to me, Tim, on that, and because we lived that as well in my store, was no silos. There were no silos. Most stores, new, used, parts, service, they all have their own agenda. They all have the things they care about. Used cars wasn't thrilled about service making money. Service doesn't care about used cars making money.
Back and forth. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the reality is, guys, we got to all be in this together. And if we're not in a situation where we drop the walls, drop the silos, are all going forward in the same direction, at the end of the day, you end up with 4 independent businesses that tend to sometimes counteract each other. So I love that you shared that. Another big thing that you had brought up was, and this is another dealership, you talked about the legendary, the Hennessy's, the Butler organization. Here's another one, Fletcher Jones. Mm-hmm. I don't know, number one for over 30 years. Maybe they're doing something right. Yeah. Maybe success leaves clues there. And one of the big takeaways there is during COVID, when that happened and inventory started to shrink, Tim, a lot of dealers either massively reduced their advertising spend or they eliminated it altogether. Now, I shared with my clients at that time, I thought, if you're even thinking about that, it's a massive mistake, because advertising is a one-way light switch. If you turn it off, it shuts off immediately. But when you flip it back on, it's kind of like those assembly plants. It takes months to get buyers' consideration and market awareness back in the mix. Fletcher Jones, would you mind sharing that story? You mentioned Heather, who's been there for a long time.
Sure.
Incredible
and again, not even,
professional.
Just had the privilege to meet Heather and have a conversation with her. And because, I'm a student of this car business, we did have an incredible conversation. She is another incredible human. And, but she's
been a rock star there for years.
She's unbelievable. She's absolutely great. Unbelievable. But she said, look, when COVID happened and all this, everybody started pulling back. And I don't want to misquote her. I think she said they tripled. I know that it at least doubled. And then they gained even more market share. So those types of people, instead of pulling back on the reins, there's, we talked about it. I don't want to be redundant and talk about the same stores, but there's some stores that even in this market, even their gross is off a little bit, of course, but are they selling the same amount of cars? Absolutely. They're just because the process is there over and over and over and over again. So, and Heather obviously is one of those human beings that is just dialed in on process, and she knows this business and she knows people and she knows how to run an organization. So yeah, I think she said they tripled, but at least doubled, and they gained market share. And there's a lot of those stories out there.
So I was just, I've been fortunate enough to know their general manager, Dave Gonzalez, there for a long time, since he was in Chicago with the Fletcher organization. And he's the leader of that, just absolutely renowned. This is the number one Mercedes store on planet Earth, everybody. Yeah. So again, when they do something and it gets success over and over and over again, I'm clearly paying attention. They were the first big group I ever signed on my reverse risk client, and I've been fortunate to know them ever since. But what's interesting is, again, here's an organization that is doing things in broad daylight that everybody can see, and yet the majority of dealers out there will go, I don't think that, maybe that works at Newport, maybe that works for Mercedes. It's not going to work for me. And then they go back to doing this very thing they've been doing and had loyalty to that has failed them over and over and over again. So this is my next book I'm going to put up. I love this book. Rohit Bhargavas, who wrote this, I met him at South by Southwest a number of years ago. Non-obvious. I'm in love with counterintuitive thinking. I'm in love with the non-obvious. Because if you do the obvious, isn't that what 85% of your competitors are doing?
Yeah.
I don't know. That smells like average, a path to average, whereas uncommon or non-obvious is going to take you down that different path. One of the things I learned from a number of spectacular organizations, Tim, who did the same thing as Fletcher, and they were very much in the minority, is advertising and search had never been lower as an expense. I mean, it was the cheapest it had ever been. So you could literally dominate the market while everybody else was bailing out. I love that. So one other thing, and you mentioned as part of that, you mentioned, there's dealerships that are cutting back on expense, reducing staffing. And you know what? A lot of that stuff makes sense. There's only one problem. You can't get to the top. You can't get back to where you were playing defense. Do you agree?
100%. And I, in fact, you asked about a book. I had the privilege, and hopefully I'm going to finish it soon, and maybe it'll come out at the beginning of the year with my buddy Damien Boudreau. But my part of the book, and I'm even thinking about doing a completely different spinoff, because in the chapter at least, and maybe the future book will be called "Don't Fall for the Yeah Buts." And the yeah buts are but that's the LA market. That's never, but they're selling Mercedes. But insert whatever. But you have no idea. You can't get OEM. But but you'll never change. Insert whatever. But we live in a world, unfortunately, when I see, as you do, some of the greatest operators, and we mentioned some of them on this podcast, you see some stores that are struggling, but you're trying to figure out, guys, it's right here. Success leaves clues. Just stay consistent. The problem is most leadership, and that's why we have our podcast called Leadership in the Dealership. Most leadership goes to a 20 group, or they'll go to an event and they get an idea, and then they don't stay true to the idea, and then it fizzles out. Right? It's not processed, right, wrong, or indifferent. I think as leaders, we have to set the tone. We have to cast the sail and head, like I said before, direction determines your destination. But I think and part of the keys for success is, number one, you have to review your game film daily. There was a lot of reviewing game film yesterday at halftime. Your affiliation with the San Francisco 49ers and everything else, they review game film. We said, that we're gonna hit this team with this attack, but if it's not working, you have to have the ability to say, you know what, we're still heading the direction, but we've got to change the sail a little bit because the wind changed on us a little bit, and that's the key. But the problem that I see, just in general, I'm gonna call it out, in most organizations, and this is, again, I've got so many ideas, I've just got to sit down and write them all. Is and I'm bullish on this, is insecurity and pride. And a lot of it is probably the same. We've got leadership in the dealership that is insecure about their position. So then as you said before, it's the back channeling, and it's the biting each other in the rear end, and this department and this department. They're all jockeying to get the new. That is a cancer. That is the little foxes that destroy the vine in any organization. That's why Kevin walked into the room and said, "Give me everybody's cards. You don't have titles anymore. We're here to serve people." And the rest is history. So I think that the pain of going through that is too much for people. They're not willing to give that. They're not willing to pay that price to show up 2 hours like Kobe and Michael did before, 3 hours before practice. They're not willing. It's okay because we've always done it that way. And I think the people that get that, the Heathers, the Patricks, the Kevins, and so on and so forth, those are the people that get it, and they will continue to be successful, and they'll be successful at everything they do, period.
Yeah, and I think that's a great takeaway as well, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because if you look around, if you go backwards and you look back at all of the changes and the adversity and the obstacles that we run into in this business, one thing is clear, okay? The Sam Packs of the world, the Galpins of the world, the Fletcher Jones of the world. You mentioned, Butler, Hennessy. These guys always end up on top. Why is that? Why is that? Well, because to your point, they have great leadership. They have process. They put their egos aside. They have a servant mindset in terms of they're obsessed not only with their clients' experience, they're obsessed with their associates. So I think there's so many of these hallmarks that you're speaking of. And by the way, I got to give a shout out to the great Damien Boudreau. I love that guy. You mentioned, hey, loving on people. If you can't love on Damien Boudreau, man, you probably need to have your pulse checked, because you may have the Tin Man syndrome.
Yeah, your lever's broke,
have a heart. Sure. But such a tremendous guy who has such a incredibly positive impact and has for years on our industry. And speaking of that, when you look at people like Ali Rita, who's selling GM products in Dearborn, Michigan, Ford's headquarters. When you look at and two of those, GMC and Cadillac, and all he's done is sell more cars. He holds the record. He has sold 1,532 cars. He sold, if my memory serves me, 209 cars in a month was his best month. 32 cars in a day was his best day. Frank Criniti over at Piazza Honda, has sold 21 in a day, 152 in a month. You've got Bernie Mado, works at Premier Nissan in Louisiana, and he's number one Nissan salesperson in the world. These guys, they don't rely on ups. They don't rely on leads. They don't rely on phone calls. You know what they rely on? Relationships. So it really does matter. I got to ask you a couple things. Number one, you mentioned leadership in the dealership, and you've got the chapter coming out in Damien's book sometime next year, but you also have a podcast, Tim. And what made you finally, after all this time, say, okay, fine, okay, I'm going to do it? And our mutual friend, who we have tremendous respect for, Paul Daly, another guy who does so many great things in this industry, him and Kyle, love those two guys and love their hearts.
Yeah.
So what is it that made that finally happen?
So we started a podcast, not because I needed to see my name anywhere, but during COVID, because dealers were scared. And there was a lot of dealers, they didn't know. And we came up with a process and basically and our first Tim Talks was March of 2020, March 31st or end of March. And I had spent a lot of time with the CMO at a Kentucky dealership, which at the time, Kentucky did not, which is my home state, salespeople weren't even allowed to physically be in the store. So we had to figure things out. We did without, QR codes on real estate signs, and we text-enabled phone numbers, and we kept them alive. So I wanted to get to the masses, and believe it or not, and and we used to do it live. And the first one, we had over 500 people live on that podcast. And then I was getting, not mail, but I was getting, emails. Thank you so much. My store only does 80 a month, and blah, 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 blah. So that went really strong for a year and a half. And then I'm like, man, I got too much stuff going on. Let me just kind of sunset this thing, because I don't need to be that guy. And then it was I'm an emotional guy. Then it was the emails that started coming from those same people that don't get to go to Digital Dealer, that don't get to go to all these things and listen or have to pay. And they're like, hey, where'd you go? I missed you. Blah, 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 blah. So when we wanted to start it back up again, I'm very bullish on exactly what we're talking about. The only difference, yes, I do think there's other products that are better than others, but at the end of the day, the difference in the dealership is the leadership, hence leadership in the dealership. So I wanted to, because a lot of people can't get out, right? They can't go travel. They can't get to see these beautiful dealerships and maybe these not so beautiful dealerships, but they're run like clockwork, and I wanted to put the best leaders that I have seen on a podcast, to where that person that, maybe not have the finances or the or go to the conferences or just pick up the phone and call one of these guys or gals. So I wanted to make that available. Now that I've become a grandpa and I'm officially on the back nine per se, your priorities change. You want to leave. Obviously, you want to take care of your family, but you want to leave a legacy. You want to leave people better than you found them. You want to pour into people and say, not only look at my successes, but more importantly, I've learned more from my mistakes. Look where I dropped the ball. Please don't do that. The person on the other side of the minefield is the person you ask on how to get across the minefield, not the person right next to you.
That's
so
right.
I wanted to pour into people, and I wanted to give back, and I wanted to, what do people, again, what do people, I tell my team all the time, what do people say about you when you leave the room? What kind of fragrance, right, is left in that room when you leave? Are people fired up? Are they encouraged? Or they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that guy or girl left. Good Lord, what a black, what are we leaving? And this industry has been incredibly good to me and good to you. And I just wanted to give back a little bit. I don't care about having but I wanted to give back. And to the masses, obviously you can download it doesn't cost you anything to go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anything else, and people can listen to that. So that's why we've been cranking those out as quickly as we can, for sure.
Well, I've had the good fortune and the pleasure to join you, and thank you for having me as a guest. It was an absolute pleasure to be with you, and it's a pleasure to amplify your podcast, just because, again, like your product, it matters, and it does impact people. It does, and I'm the same way. It's not a matter of whether there's one person listening, a million persons listening. I have people like you're talking about that direct message on LinkedIn or email, or I got a text message yesterday. Hey, why aren't you doing reels anymore? We miss those. And I okay, well, like you, there's so much. It's so much like if you want to,
amen.
As you know this, if you want to do them and really do want to make a difference in somebody's life, it takes a lot of thought. It takes time, and you don't want to do it half-ass, excuse the language. I want to do it the right way. You want to do it the right way. So I'm just glad that it's back. I know a lot of people are glad that it's back. I look forward to seeing continued episodes, listening to continued episodes of your podcast, Tim Cox, and obviously wishing you and your organization, the people in it, all the best. Now, I'm just curious, speed round, first car you ever owned?
1980 Buick Regal with Craigers, by the way.
1980?
Buick Regal, 2-door, yep.
God, you were living it up, man.
Yeah.
My first car was a 1970 Chevelle that had body rot.
Yeah, 1980 Regal Burgundy with the Brome interior.
All right. Favorite car of all time?
Favorite car of all time? 458 Italia.
Ooh, beautiful ride.
I don't own one, ladies and gentlemen. I do not own one. That's David's garage. But anyway, 458.
I'm far too pragmatic for that. And finish this for me. I love the car business because
I love the car business because it allows me to love on a lot of people.
You can't wrap up better than that. Tim, I really appreciate you taking the time to join. Thank you for all of the wisdom and perspective, insights that you shared. I know it was tremendously valuable for me. I would trust that for anybody listening to this, that they're going to also find it tremendously valuable. If you want to connect with Tim Cox, if you want to learn more, if you're not one of the 5,000 that's already on CarNow, and you want to learn more about CarNow, learn more about Tim, or connect with him, go to davidspisak.com. You can get a direct access not only to this episode, but the show notes from this episode, of course, and how to connect with Tim. And as that book comes out, I can promise you we will amplify that as well, and we'll probably even buy some of those books and hand them out, send them out to anybody who would love to get an advanced copy of that book. But until then, Tim, I look forward to seeing you at a future industry event. Wishing you all the very best for you and your family. And for those listening, thanks for taking the time to join. If you want to leave a review, please do so. Good, bad, or ugly. We learn from them all and we appreciate them all. And please take the time to download, subscribe, and most importantly, if you want to spread a little Tim love around the auto industry, share this episode out, because there's one thing I know for certain. By the time they get done to listening to Tim here, they're going to feel a whole lot better and be another foot off the ground. Tim, thanks for joining. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All the best.